These coaches, they led the Suns, the Bucks, and the Sixers to the 3 best regular season records in the NBA. Now they are looking for jobs. For much more, here's the NBA Countdown crew. Greeny, take it away.
All right, Kevin, thank you. And it might be the most interesting NBA day of the entire year. Of course, we have Game 1 tonight in Denver. We've got the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, otherwise known as the draft lottery, coming up shortly. And then there was the news from Philadelphia this morning with Doc Rivers out after 3 seasons. So I want to bring Woj in on that thought. Woj is in Chicago getting set for the lottery tonight. But, Woj, quite a few very interesting openings now around the league for coaches and quite a few very high-profile candidates. Walk us through the way the landscape shapes up right now.
Well, Greeny, let's start in Philadelphia, where Doc Rivers, as you said, was let go earlier today. Mike Budenholzer, Nick Nurse, Frank Vogel among candidates, Monty Williams, the former Phoenix coach, and Mike D'Antoni, who before Doc Rivers was hired and was available with the Clippers in 2020. He was deep in the process with Elton Brand when he was as general manager and Philadelphia ownership. He will be part of this conversation in Philadelphia. And then in Phoenix, I think you're going to look at the Suns with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, Chris Paul. This team, they're going to hire, I think, an established veteran head coach. You know, certainly Nick Nurse, Mike Budenholzer among them, and some other candidates. And then the Milwaukee Bucks, whose process I think is a little more wide open. Listen, they're certainly having Giannis Antetokounmpo is certainly very attractive. The team they have back there, I wouldn't rule out the possibility among a number of assistants who've interviewed there. If they feel like they could get lightning in a bottle with a younger coach, they're open-minded to it. But certainly, you're going to see a lot of the same names who were let go in this process. Their names are popping up again: Budenholzer, Nick Nurse, Monty Williams among them.
Yeah, interesting to see some championship caliber teams looking for coaches and some coaches with championships on their resume. All right, Woj, thank you. We will see you coming up on Countdown, then, of course, on the lottery tonight. And so Doc Rivers, who is someone all three of you are close to, obviously that was not unexpected news, but it still comes and is obviously quite significant. Of all the many elements, all the many angles on the dismissal of Doc today, what's the most interesting to you?
The most interesting to me is monitoring who the 76ers are going to bring in next, because it's going to tell me who's running the franchise, who's the face of the franchise. Is it Joel Embiid, the reigning MVP and one of the most gifted big men this game has ever seen, or is it James Harden, who is clearly not the player he used to be? James Harden obviously is still an all-star, led the league in assists. This is not to throw shade at him. We're just talking purely basketball here. He looked a step slower, like he lost it. Boston got up in his grill. 5 of the 7 games he played against them in this series, he couldn't generate more than 4 field goals in those games. Clearly, he wasn't himself. And so when you look at it from that perspective, and Doc Rivers is gone, particularly considering the way that Joel Embiid and James Harden performed in Game 6 and 7, specifically for Game 7, I'm going to keep my eyes on who that success is going to be.
James Harden got Doc Rivers fired. And we heard about this deliberation. There was back and forth, as you have anytime you have disappointment. This is about James Harden. If they want to hitch their wagon to James Harden at this point of his career, to me, let me just say, that's an insane move at this point. Your best player, your MVP, love the coach. And when do you see the MVP and the best player of a team love a coach and you lose the guy? Don't get it.
You guys don't have to worry about that. Philadelphia is not going to give Mike D'Antoni this job. Okay. This is Joel Embiid's team. He's the reigning MVP of the league, and it's a unique circumstance because he is the first MVP to never make it to a conference final.
Yeah.
The main thing that's happening around the league is that the owners have monopoly money now. There used to be a time if you won a championship as a coach, there was some loyalty there. You had some years on your deal. The team would still keep you around even if they wanted to fire you. A lot of these guys, Coach Bud, Nick Nurse, Monty Williams, they still had years on their contract. But when you bought a team for $4 billion in Phoenix, or with the Sixers, their ownership just bought the Commanders.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the deep pockets.
Absolutely. So we'll see where all of these coaches land, and we'll see which of them winds up landing in Philadelphia. Meantime, we've got game one tonight. We've got the Wembanyama.
For NBA coaches, despite any of their previous success, Doc Rivers, the latest to lose his job, the Sixers firing him after going 154-82 in 3 seasons. What's your take on this move?
Yeah, I have to guess, that this is more of a sort of organizational, big picture reshuffling, because you can't blame Doc Rivers for what happened in game 6 and 7 of this series. His stars did not deliver when they needed to. Down the stretch in game 6, and then for all of game 7, Joel Embiid shot 5 of 18 in game 7. That's not Doc Rivers' fault. He was getting the looks. So I have to think this is part of a larger play. We'll have to see what happens. It might involve James Harden. James Harden, not very complimentary or effusive about Doc Rivers when he was asked about him after game 7. And he is, of course, has a player option, could become a free agent this summer. So maybe Daryl Morey runs that organization, is trying to keep James Harden and keep James Harden happy. I don't know. But I am a little disturbed at this trend of blaming coaches. If we look at who has been fired just this season, just in the past couple months, and I'm talking mostly about Monty Williams on this list here right at the bottom, I don't understand what Monty Williams could have done differently in Phoenix. They traded away a chunk of the team to get Kevin Durant. And by the way, I would have done the same thing. He's Kevin Durant. I totally get it. But then you have to understand what you are handing your coach to play with. They lost to the #1 overall seed in Denver. And by the way, he didn't have Chris Paul for most of that series. So I am a little confused about what's going on with all of these coaches getting fired, because it's always a question of, yeah, you can get rid of that guy, but who are you going to replace him with? I'm waiting to see in Philly who they replace Doc Rivers with.
Sweepstakes tonight, all that and more.
Interested to see what he does in this series, because we usually see him hunting matchups, right? That's been one of the hallmarks of LeBron's NBA playoff career. We haven't seen that as much, and I think he is going to need to do that more to help generate offense in this series. So I'm interested to see what the 38-year-old has left in the tank. He's a guy who I just never bet against in any situation. Steph Curry is another one of those guys. I mean, you gotta give guys the credit that they've earned, and until LeBron James is knocked out and his NBA career is over, I can't really say that he can't get to the NBA Finals. So I think I got as good a chance in this one as any for me.
Well, if the Lakers want to advance to the LeBron James Invitational, they have to find a way to stop the Joker. And at one point for Dwight Howard on a Lakers team several years ago, that meant channeling his inner Batman. Now Darvin Ham saying the only way to stop Jokic is to kidnap him. I imagine your answer is a bit tamer than that, but how do you stop the big man?
I mean, it's not untrue, right? I mean, they could do it for them. I just don't think they're going to resort to that. But yeah, I mean, this is where Anthony Davis is really going to have the chance to prove himself or not. He has been the best defensive player in these playoffs. Nikola Jokic has been consistently the best offensive player in these playoffs. Obviously, Jason Tatum, Devin Booker have had bursts, but Nikola Jokic has really been that irresistible force. Anthony Davis has been the unmovable object, and I can't wait to see what happens here when these two match up. Now, if we look at their past history, it's not on Anthony Davis's side. In fact, if you look at their matchups where Anthony is guarding him on possessions, Jokic has a 58% scoring rate on those possessions. So that's not what you want. So we'll have to see whether, now that Anthony's defense has really ratcheted up a level, whether we can see AD really rise to that challenge in this series. All of Denver's offense obviously runs through Jokic, so they're going to be trying to get the ball out of his hands as much as possible. Of course, he's an exceptional passer, best passer in the league, one of the best passing big men ever. But you still rather take your shot at him threading a great pass to another player instead of him going to the basket.
Right, Jokic coming off a Sun series in which he averaged a triple-double. This series against AD, quite a different test. We'll go to the East now. The Heat, kind of the Cinderella team of the playoffs. Although, Rachel, I don't even like making that comparison.